Greetings, Andy Warhol back. Admit it, you missed me. This time, we are turning rubbish into art, the ordinary into the extraordinary.
And thank you again, Andy. I'm starting off experimenting with some graded pencils from 2H to 6B. HB being an ordinary drawing pencil, 2H being hard, 6B being black. Here I'm showing you that soft lines rub out a lot easier than hard lines. These are things to remember. Today the object we are drawing is a bit of scrunched up rubbish. You can see that I'm arranging it before I start, making sure that it looks scrunched. To make sure I draw it exactly as it is, I've even turned it upside down. I'm sketching the outlines with very soft lines. In fact, I'm probably pressing harder than I would usually, otherwise you probably wouldn't be able to see. Bear in mind that the camera is at a slightly different angle to my eyes, so you're looking straight down onto the wrapper. I've got a view slightly from the side. Although I started the session using graded pencils, some of you might have those. Otherwise, an ordinary drawing pencil is absolutely fine for this task. You need to press hard to get the dark shades and press really lightly to get the pale shades. The other piece of equipment I've got is a rubber that has sharp corners so I can rub out small details. The outlines took me about an hour to draw. Again, it's speeded up. In fact, the whole piece of work took me over 2 hours. This is why at GCSE in Year 11 you get a 10-hour exam. To produce a piece of work that has the level of skill required at GCSE, you need to invest time. As I sat drawing this drawing, I actually got into a state of flow. I had my headphones in, I was listening to my favourite music, and actually, although when I looked at the phone and realised I'd recorded for over 2 hours, it really didn't feel like 2 hours. Artists tend to be very patient people. I have to confess this is the third time I started this drawing. The first time I tried to record on my iPad and the batteries ran out, but I only realised an hour after it happened. The second time I tried to do this drawing, my husband came into the room with a cup of coffee and closed the door behind him, causing a draft, and the wrapper blew across the desk. So this is the third attempt at this drawing. For me, the halfway point on this drawing was between the outlines and the shading. The outlines took me around about an hour. You'll see that I kept working back over them, kept checking them, adjusting them, making sure that I had them right. Then I started working with the shading. Not working in one area at a time, but working over the whole wrapper. I would keep evaluating my progress, checking to see if the dark areas were dark enough, and if they weren't, working over them again. The tricky thing with this wrapper is it was reflective, and actually the lighting kept changing because of the amount of time it took to draw. So capturing those reflections was also quite a challenge. The shading stage isn't just colouring in. I'm using the pencil to describe the form. I'm changing the angle of my shade each time. Now this is the point where I realised that actually sticking the paper down to the table wasn't such a good idea. And I hadn't realised how much I move the sheet of paper when I'm doing an ordinary drawing. So I did find this more challenging than I expected to, because I think I would usually turn the page to help me shade in the direction that I'd want to describe the form. In the same way as we did last week, you need to really look at those letter shapes. Nowhere on that wrapper is your handwriting. So you really need to look at how we can represent those letters as shade and line. Add shadow underneath to make the object look like it's sitting on a flat surface. When I shaded the shadow in, I shaded horizontally from side to side, and that made it look like the table was flat. At no point am I smudging the drawing. I am, however, using the rubber to soften areas. You could roll up a bit of tissue into a point and work on small areas, but what you're aiming to do is get a really sharp, crisp drawing. Artists rarely smudge their work. You'll see them smudge maybe very small areas, but when I've seen students working, the temptation to smudge their work across the page is just too much. Earlier on, you'll have seen me use paper to cover underneath my hand to make sure that I didn't accidentally smudge my drawing, so I could keep it crisp and show the difference in contrast, the difference between the lights and the darks. When you're finished, send your work to the teacher who's been leading your live lessons.